Today I wanted to talk about why I think Battleground Blitz might actually be the savior of World of Warcraft PvP. When Battleground Blitz was first announced, I was super skeptical that this was going to be a good game mode. I was not a huge fan of rated Battlegrounds in general. I think how much time it took to queue up, get a group together, play the BGs, only to have them fall apart. It was just a terrible experience. And so yeah, solo queue rated Battlegrounds did sound like it would be better than that, but I still wasn't really convinced it was going to be a good game mode. The pre-patch for the War Within has introduced the official rated queuing mode for solo queue Battleground Blitz, and I have done a complete 180, and I think this might be the greatest game mode ever introduced into WoW, other than Plunderstorm. And I kind of want to go over why I think that. So my first thought on this is Battlegrounds are kind of everyone's introduction into World of Warcraft PvP, and I think everyone has nostalgic moments of their first Battlegrounds in World of Warcraft, how much fun they were playing with friends, and just kind of the epicness of some of the Battlegrounds throughout the years. So for them to put a new focus on Battlegrounds, I think is just a huge win for the game. All of the changes that they made to the Battlegrounds themselves are freaking amazing. I think Battlegrounds were pretty good already, but all of the changes make the game modes quicker, and they make the Battlegrounds more involved. There's no more just sitting at a flag board the entire battleground, because there's only 8 players and the battleground objectives switch or change. You're constantly wanting to move, basically, unless you're having to hold a flag against an enemy player. There's not going to be very often that you're just sitting at a flag doing nothing the entire game, which I think is a huge change that makes it way more fun. There's more opportunities to make play in Battleground Blitz when you compare it to World of Warcraft arenas, for instance. With World of Warcraft arenas, you have your comp, you have your goes, you're trying to set everything up perfectly, and your games are going to look very similar every single time as far as, win conditions and that kind of thing. I think with Battleground Blitz, there's way more opportunities to make play regardless of your role in the battleground. For instance, I was in a Warsong Gulch the other day, and I was healing in the Warsong Gulch, and my Demon Hunter had like 10 stacks of the flag buff on him, so he was gonna die if anybody touched him. We had a Devastation Evoker come in, and everyone knows how quickly Devastation Evokers can burst somebody from full health. I was able to Hex and then lasso the Demon Hunter just long enough for the Demon Hunter to get the cap before the Devastation Evoker killed my Demon Hunter. And you don't really get chances to make game-winning plays like that in any other game mode in World of Warcraft. This same battleground Vinruki was in, and he used Ice Wall to wall off the top of the Warsong Gulch roof, which gave us about 15 seconds for the same scenario where our flag carrier had a ton of stacks, and it was literally just enough time for us to get the kill and cap the flag before the entire enemy team bursted down the flag carrier. I think these type of moments are going to be super clippable, and I think that's going to be a huge improvement for the game. I think if you are on WoW Twitter at all, you've seen a lot of people say like, dude, I wish we had more PvP montages. I don't know how you get PvP montages from arenas. It's the same game, it's the same setups. There's not really those cool moments that you can get in, say, World PvP or now Battleground Blitz. Another big thing for Battleground Blitz that I think makes it huge for WoW PvP is the macro versus micro play. And this is something that my friend Moon has brought up, but you aren't so punished for not maybe knowing your spec perfectly or playing your class perfectly, as long as you are playing the battleground objectives. There's a lot more reward for, making macro plays, holding a base or attacking a flag carrier or something like that. And it's not so much about playing your comp necessarily perfectly. And I think that's going to make Battleground Blitz a lot more accessible to a lot more players, which we're going to get into a little bit later. Another thing about Battleground Blitz, I am a healer main, and healing Battlegrounds is fun. I do enjoy healing arenas, but it is not nearly as fun as healing, Battlegrounds. Healing Battlegrounds is fun because you're getting to use your whole toolkit. You're getting to use talents and spells and abilities that you might not necessarily use. There's no dampening, so it doesn't feel like you're just doing nothing at a certain point, and you're not having to worry about like the perfect positioning the entire time. So making it more fun for healers is just a huge win. Like, that has been some of the biggest issues throughout Dragonflight and probably previous seasons as well, is queue times. And that's another thing I would mention, is it seems like DPS and healer queue times are the exact same. Making the healer to DPS ratio the way it is has made it to where the queue times are almost this exact same for both roles. I think when you have to wait 30 minutes to play the game that you enjoy playing, that's just not acceptable, which is what solo shuffle has been the entire last expansion. But it doesn't seem like that's the case for Battleground Blitz. Another thing I like about Battleground Blitz is that it gives tanks a role to play in PvP that is not just a meme. Yes, there's been tank specs that have worked here and there, but who has ever gone into a solo shuffle with a tank spec and been happy about that? Pretty much no one ever. But tanks are completely viable in every single map of Battleground Blitz. Obviously they're good for flag carrying maps, but they're also great at holding bases and base capturing maps. I had a Brewmaster Monk spin the flag at Blacksmith for like 10 minutes against 5 players, and I think that's cool. I think that's the fantasy of a tank, right? Is maybe you're not killing the entire team, but you're able to live. I just think it's cool that tanks get to play the game in a way that is meaningful and actually makes sense for that role. One of the things that I found really cool about like vanilla WoW and a couple expansions in is when servers weren't cross faction and you recognized other players from your server. I think some of that might come back with Battleground Blitz as you're queuing with people who are around the same skill level and you get multiple Battlegrounds with them. The thing that's cool about it is sometimes you might be facing them and sometimes they might be on your same team. But I've noticed when I'm queuing rated Battlegrounds, especially if you're queuing multiple in a night, you're going to run into the same players multiple times, probably several games in a row. I have noticed a couple times where I've saw maybe a play that someone had made the previous game, and then they're in with you the next game, and you get to say, dude, those plays were dope. Or maybe I saw a healer that was top in the charts, but he was on the enemy team last time, and this time he's on my team. I was like, dude, great heals last game. I think recognizing names in Battleground Blitz is actually going to be really cool. Another thing with Battleground Blitz that is awesome is it's not just solo queue like solo shuffle. You get to queue with one friend as long as one of you are a healer, right? That, like, obviously you could play 2s or 3s, but I think that is so big because this is an MMO. You want to play with people and you want to play with friends and people whenever possible. So the fact that you get to queue this solo queue Battleground Blitz with another player, be in comms, have fun together, I think that's huge. I do think there's going to be a huge advantage to players who are queuing in duos versus solo queue, and I hope that doesn't become like a huge issue. But I think the fact that you get to queue 2 people at once is actually a huge W for the game. Another big thing for Battleground Blitz is I think the meta won't be so niche, right? Like in 3s, there's always, top 2, 3, 4 comps. And when you're ladder queuing, it is just the same comp over and over and over and over. And I'm sure there's going to be specs that are better and worse in solo shuffle queue. But because you don't get to queue your team or choose your teammates, I'm hoping and I'm thinking that you're going to see a good class and spec diversity across the board when it comes to queuing Battleground Blitz. I know I have seen a lot of people suggesting that the rank 1 titles need to be spec based because there are probably going to be stronger and weaker specs in Battleground Blitz. But I kind of wonder just what it's going to look like, because I don't know how. I see the point of like, how are you going to carry a game as a certain spec, but I think every class and spec brings something unique to the Battleground game mode, and because you don't get to choose your teammates, and I think you have less control over the game in an 8v8 mode versus a really DPS solo shuffle queues are, you know, 2v2. So I don't know. We'll have to see how the first season goes. Maybe they'll make that change. I don't think it would be a bad change. I do just wonder if it's actually really necessary. Another big thing for Battleground Blitz that I think is going to make it a huge win is that Battlegrounds are just less intimidating for new players to come in and try out. I think a lot of players are super intimidated by queuing into rated 2s, rated 3s, you know, solo shuffle. And, you know, like a fresh character queuing into one of those game modes is still probably going to be facing people who have tons of experience with the game mode, and it just feels like an unwinnable game. Whereas Battlegrounds, because they're objective based and there's, you know, more macro play, you could still be learning your class, you know, queue into low rated Battleground Blitz and still have a good time even if you're not perfect at your class. And it's not so intimidating because, you know, you don't have these players that you're immediately clashing with that are just going to dominate you. There's a little bit more nuance, and you get the ability to actually play the game and not just get dominated. And with that being said, I think one of the biggest issues with solo shuffle, rated 3s, and that kind of stuff over the past expansion, you know, especially Shadowlands going into Dragonflight, is it felt like we lost the entire bottom half of the experience of like the rated 3s ladder to solo shuffle. It felt like the only people that were queuing 3s after solo shuffle came out were people who were interested in, you know, pushing for gladiator, like, you know, top whatever 5-10%. The ladder were the only people queuing 3s, and everyone else had just completely switched the solo shuffle ladder, which made the ratings feel absolutely terrible for the first, you know, at least 2-3 seasons, and it only started feeling good once they didn't do the MMR reset going into season 4. I think Battleground Blitz is going to attract more people to rated PvP and to queue the game mode, to where there's going to be a huge diversity of experience between low ratings and high ratings. It's not going to feel like, you know, 1500 is people who have 2100 experience. I think we're going to see a huge difference from the lower to the top part of the bracket. And yeah, those are like kind of what I could come up with why I think Battleground Blitz is a huge win for rated PvP in World of Warcraft. I didn't think this was going to be that crazy of a change, and I've been completely changed my mind. I think this is going to be an awesome game mode, and I'm really hoping it brings in tons of new players to PvP, and I hope it has like a, you know, kind of a trickle down effect where, you know, they maybe want to try out 2v2s, 3v3s, and maybe, you know, I don't really care about solo shuffle growing, but, you know, it'd be cool if there was just more engagement across the board in all WoW rated PvP. Let me know down in the comments what you think. If you think there's other reasons that Battleground Blitz is a win, or, you know, other reasons you might think Battleground Blitz is not so good for the game. I know I've been worried that Battleground Blitz is going to hurt rated 3s even more than solo shuffle did, but as I've been playing it recently, I've been thinking more along the lines of, you know, more players in rated PvP is probably good for all the brackets across the board. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys in the War Within.